r/AskReddit.
What is not a bullet you dodged, but a huge tactical nuke you dodged? 1. After a night of partying, a bunch of us wanted to go watch the sun come up at a local beach when we had just graduated HS. There wasn't a sober one amongst us, and one guy volunteered to drive in his minivan. A few of us said no, let's watch it from the deck, but he said he was sober enough. I just had a bad feeling and a bunch of us stayed back and slept it off at the house. We were all woken up a few hours later about 8 o'clock to phone ringing off the hook, cops, and freaking out parents. Pre-cell phone days. They were in a really bad single car rollover accident. 4 of 6 dead, no one wearing seatbelts. They would have had to have taken a curve at about 160 km/h. That was a rough summer. Oh, and survivor's guilt and depression is a real thing. 2. I have some acres of woodland that I take care of with a chainsaw to keep a desirable mix of tree species and avoid overcrowding. Often when I cut through the trunk of a tree that's too close to other trees, it just leans against them rather than falling down. Then I have to make a series of angled cuts and let chunks of the trunk slide off, more or less vertically, onto the ground. Eventually, the trunk winds up vertical enough that I can push it toward a clear space and complete the process of felling the tree. Well, a couple of years ago, I was getting to that point. Tree was basically vertical, a few thousand pounds of wood balanced on its end, reaching 30 feet up. I made another cut, and the rest of the trunk slid down off the 3 feet or so of trunk that I'd separated it from at the base. And then it started to lean. That sucker was coming down. Except it wasn't going the direction I'd planned. No big deal, just move out of the way. Except I'd gotten careless and left a bunch of branches down there at my feet, and I was disturbed to find that my legs couldn't move. I was stuck rooted to that spot, which was very close indeed to the way the tree was moving. It wound up just nicking my head on its way down. Another few inches and it would have done a lot more than that. I'm always very careful to make sure the ground is cleared of branches when I do this now. 3. In uni, me and my 2 best friends were drinking, playing Mario Kart and just shooting the SHT. We were hungry and wanted food. I said let's just make a tombstone pizza because we've been drinking and most delivery services were closed at 1:30 a.m. One said he's fine to drive. I said no, bad idea. He got the other guy to go with. McDonald's usually doesn't take 2 hours to get, so eventually I went for a scoot ride since McDonald's was less than 2 miles away. I noticed there's a taped off spot on the bridge right before McDonald's with a crane, cops and an ambulance. They curbed the car and drove it off the bridge and into the shallow creek top first and died on impact. I dodged the nuke of death but ate the bullet of survivor's guilt for nearly 5 years. Edit, Woe was not expecting all the upvotes, awards and positive feedback. Thank you everyone who read this and felt something, because life is tough and you never know when it's the time. Have a nice day and thank you all. Edit, based off the comments I guess I have a few things to add. 1. I am doing good. Depression and fear of driving lasted a pretty long time. Moving back home for 2 semesters helped a lot versus being alone in the college apartment we shared. 2. It's those old Razor scooters that you kick, not a moped or electric scooter. 3. I took the keys of the driver but he had a spare key and they left when I went to the bathroom. Got to the living room and they were gone. Looked out the window and his car was gone. Verbally said Fouquet, what an idiot. His dad is going to be livid if he gets pulled over. 4. I had some chest pains one night and woke up my wife to tell her. She got a little scared that it might be a heart attack and we agreed that I should go to the ER. The nurses were pretty sure it was a false alarm but would run an EKG as is common practice. In my head I was hoping that the chest pain would come back, not to prove a heart attack, but so that we can find out what the chest pain was. The EKG was done by one veteran nurse and a new nurse. I was watching over their shoulders. Something was flashing on the screen that made both nurses look at each other with disbelief. They ran it again and one nurse went out to the station for help. The other stayed with me and very nicely told my wife and daughter to go back out to the waiting room. A few seconds later 5-6 more people came into the room slowly and calmly and began prepping me for something. It turns out that I was having my second heart attack that night in the ER. The doctors and nurses found an obstruction in my heart and were prepping me to have it cleared and a stent placed. When I got out of surgery, the doctor who placed the stent told me, "You probably picked the best time and place to have a heart attack, right here in the ER." Edit. Thank you to everyone for the upvotes and awards. If anything, this has taught me not to take your health for granted and get yourself checked out if you're not feeling well. Edit number 2. The funny bullet I dodged during this event was that the doctor told me that when they put in the stent, they can go one of two ways. One entry point in the wrist and the other point is in your crotch. The male nurse had to prep the area just in case the wrist wasn't viable. Luckily for me, the wrist entry was successful. 5. Back in 2004, when I was only 20 years/0, I was on a road trip with my friend, her dog, from California to Washington. I was on I-5 North at around 1 a.m., using my cruise control to keep my speed at 75 miles per hour. Speed limit is 70 miles per hour. I'd gotten speeding tickets in that part of Northern California before. I was familiar with this drive because my BF was in LA and I lived in Seattle, so I made that trip a few times a year for a few years. All that is to say, I had learned my lesson and used cruise control to keep myself from speeding, never going more than 5 over the posted speed limit. So it's pitch black, early morning. My friend has her seat reclined all the way, taking a nap on the passenger side, her dog on her chest. I see what I assume to be lights from a cruiser come up behind me. The car slowly pulls alongside me, and matches my speed exactly. I kept my eyes straight ahead, but I knew this person was staring at me. I wasn't panicking though, not like I had in the past when I'd encountered a cop on I-5. Because I knew I wasn't really speeding. I kept glancing at the speedometer to assure myself I was good. I may have even slowed down a notch or two, to be certain. After what felt like an eternity of this cruiser just keeping pace with me, he finally slows down, swerves in behind me, and puts his lights on. As I'm slowing down and pulling off to the shoulder, I nudge my friend awake and tell her I'm getting pulled over. She asks if I was speeding. She knew my history. I assured her I was not, and had been using cruise control. I was really starting to shake by this point. Cops make most people nervous, but something just didn't feel right about this stop. I knew there was no reason to pull me over. Pitch black, middle of nowhere, hadn't seen a gas station or rest area for miles. The guy strolls up to the passenger side of my car as my friend is using the lever to get her seat upright again. When he finally gets to the passenger side window, he looks visibly surprised that I have a passenger. He begins to fumble over his words, claims that I was going 90 miles per hour. He was so damn flustered he forgot to ask for my license. I actually asked him if he needed it. He trots back to his car and my friend and I look at each other like, WTF? Her dog, BTW, was going absolutely apeshit during this entire interaction. I never saw that dog act like that before or after this happened. Now remember, I'd gotten a few tickets on that same stretch of road, within that same year or two. I was very familiar with this process and knew how long it should take and what to expect. In my previous experience, most cops go back to their cruisers for a good 6-8 minutes. This guy came back after about 2 minutes, kinda tossed my license and registration into my friend's lap, like he was annoyed, and yelled at me to slow down and told me he'd just give me a verbal warning for now. I thanked him, despite how creepy it was, and while I was putting my license back in my wallet and registration back in my glove compartment, he fired up his cruiser and floored it back onto the highway. This is also not normal. Anytime I'd been pulled over, they would always tell me to pull out ahead of them, so they could make sure I merged carefully back onto the freeway. My friend and I were freaked. She was more freaked than me. I think I was trying to explain it away, give him the benefit of the doubt, at first. But the longer I thought about it, the more uncomfortable I became. I couldn't shake that nasty feeling that something wasn't quite right. Fast forward many years later, I remember hearing about some cop that had been arrested. He'd been trolling I-5 North in Northern California. During that same time period I'd been on road trips, stopping unsuspecting young single female motorists, and sexually assaulting them in his cruiser. His MO was to pull up alongside their cars, scan them to make sure they were single females, and pull them over in desolate areas at early morning hours. He ended up murdering one of these girls when she put up too much of a fight. I can't remember his name and I don't know what he looked like. It was too dark to see his face well. But my blood turned cold when I'd heard that. Definitely dodged a huge nuclear life-changing, possibly life-ending, event thanks to my tired friend and her protective little dog. Edit: I did not expect my inbox to explode over this. I am doing my best to reply to the comments, but maybe an umbrella edit is easier. Many of you are saying that you know this case from forensic files. The case I believe you're referring to is from the 80s and happened in San Diego. So, this was an entirely different cop that I encountered. As I stated above, I didn't see the guy's face. He wasn't close enough to the side of my car thanks to my friend's dog. Not only that, I got the impression he was trying to make sure his face remained out of view. I have done some light Googling today to see if I can pinpoint this situation better and find an actual news article to point to and say, it's probably this guy. But I haven't been able to find any such thing yet. Part of the problem might be because I got the year wrong. I said 2004, because to the best of my estimation that's when I believe this happened. That being said, it's possible that it happened as early as late 2002/early 2003 or as late as 2007-2008. I made so many trips to and from California when that friend of mine joined me at 2-3 of those times. So I'm not 100% sure what year this took place. Another problem, I also don't know exactly where, either. I say I-5 North in Northern California, it's a big long state. There are a few good long desolate stretches along that highway that are pitch black at night, for miles. They always blurred together for me before, especially at night. But if I had to guess, this happened somewhere in the abyss before or after Redding, California. Scary thing I have discovered today, there are a sickening amount of stories just like this in the news, old and new. Last, thank you for all of these awards, completely unexpected and super appreciated. I seldom open Reddit up in the morning and I don't think I've ever even commented on a Reddit post before 8 PM. Today, when I saw that question, this memory from that road trip flooded me and I just shared it with exactly zero expectations for any response, let alone this. Stay safe out there. PRO tip, thanks to those commenting, if you ever find yourself alone on the highway, getting pulled over by the police and you feel in any way, shape, or form uncomfortable pulling to the shoulder, slow your car down, turn on your hazards, and call 911. If you have no service, just keep driving until you do. Inform them of your predicament, they will relay this to the cop behind you who will gladly follow you to the safe place of your choosing to make a stop. Moreover, a 911 dispatcher will also be able to warn you that there's no cop in that location, which means you should keep driving and wait for the real police to arrive. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and comment to let me know if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more upcoming videos.